Chapter 12. Gavin. I'm headed that way too, he whispers. Let's go. Gavin looks me up and down and then sets out on the path. As he walks, he unzips his gray hoodie, revealing a black t-shirt underneath, and throws it to me. I left the sweatshirt I typically wear at the clinic yesterday. I eagerly take his and zip up. We walk in silence through the woods to our usual spot. I lean over to pick up a rugged flower, weathered and beaten by the strong winds from last night. With each step, I pick off a petal, marking a senseless trail. Gavin sneaks several looks in my direction but doesn't say a word. Something must be wrong. He is quiet, unlike his usual self. I want to bring up the last time we talked and why I missed our meeting yesterday, but I stay silent. He should speak first. The woods lighten as we reach the end of the trail, and the clearing comes in sight. We walk through the opening to our special spot we have spent countless hours at throughout the years. I perch on the trunk of a tree that was struck by lightning 5 years ago. It was the first and only time in my life I have seen lightning. I found a book in our level 7 dig that I slipped under my shirt so no one would take it. Impetus screens the books we're allowed to have access to. If someone runs across one in the dig, Ms. K immediately confiscates it. Then it has to go through intense scrutiny from the Elders Board before affirming whether it is an acceptable piece of literature. If they deem it fitting for the high standards of Impetus, it usually ends up right in the museum, which makes it impossible to read and defeats the purpose of it. I wasn't letting that happen to the book I found. That was the first item I stole from the dig. I never regretted doing it either. Night after night, for a year straight, I would flip through the book. Holding a flashlight under the covers, I examined every inch of each picture, fascinated by all the creations that had existed in the before. One beautiful picture displayed lighted streaks in a dark sky over a red rock formation that looked eerily similar to the Lightstones. It was labeled as Fall Lightning Storm in Utah Canyon. It was my favorite of all the pictures, and the only way I could identify lightning 3 years later, when we were disrupted during class by a jarring noise. Before we could react, the community sirens blared and the teacher directed us in single-file lines to the emergency shelter. Since I was the last in line, I poked my head out the window before the automatic blinds shut out my view, and saw the same lighted streaks in the book, except live in our sky. It was the most amazing sight I had ever seen. 2 hours later, they released us from the shelter. After classes were completed for the day and we walked home, the yard crews were hard at work cleaning up debris that cluttered the streets. The authorities never communicated the reason we were marched to the shelter. I never told Gavin what I witnessed, but he knows I steal books when I find them. When we returned to our location 3 days after the storm, I sat down and stroked the charred marks of the lightning-struck trunk in awe. Since I didn't question it, he must have known I figured it out. He watched me with one of his half-mouthed smiles that reminds me how transparent I am to him. "How are you feeling?" Gavin finally speaks. I glare at him. I don't want to play his game today. He sighs and expands. "I mean, what are your thoughts about tomorrow?" Tomorrow. The future's ceremony. It's here already. In less than 24 hours, Impetus will reveal what they decided for my future. I don't want to talk about it. There are too many other things I need to talk to him about, and I'm not up for theorizing on the ceremony any more than I have already. "Gavin, do my eyes look different?" This morning, as I was getting ready, I could have sworn the mirror reflected a color even lighter than the day before. The green hue is more obvious. He doesn't respond at first. I thought he would ignore my question and go back to talking about the futures ceremony. But after a few minutes, he quietly admits, "Yeah, I noticed that right away today." "You noticed? Why didn't you say anything?" Gavin shrugs and picks at the bark on a tree. "Sometimes I try to believe if I don't acknowledge it, it isn't real." I huff. "Yeah, well, I've definitely perceived that over the years. Don't you think this is important, though?" "What you don't know can't hurt you." It was something we once read together in The Best Quotes of the Before, a transitional history book describing how their most known sayings were reflections of their invincible mindset and premonitions of the future destruction. As usual, the quote sparked a debate between us, and now it's coming around again. "I know it makes little sense to you, Evie, but it's a really messed up way of me protecting you." "What could you possibly be protecting me from? Other than my times out here with you, Impetus keeps me safe. They protect me. I'm fine, Gavin." Gavin opens his mouth, but closes it again. He does that often when he predicts the way the conversation will go and attempts to steer it elsewhere. He kicks at a tree root poking out of the ground with his foot. It's strange how different he can look in these moments. Most of the time, he displays confidence and control. But a few rare moments like this one has occurred where he looks smaller, less secure. "Do you have any idea who they could pair you with?" He's back to wanting to discuss the future ceremony. I sigh. This is not what I want to waste time on. I still need to tell him about the strange man and Dr. Bourdain's conversation I overheard. But with Gavin appearing so defeated, I willingly abide by his wishes. The question of who they could pair me with is something I frequently considered. Supposedly, the board makes their pairings decisions by the time we turn 14. No one really believes that, though. There are 10 males in the class. I've never interacted with one over the other, so there wouldn't be any determining factor with that. I guess genetics will be their only guide. It doesn't really matter to me, since I'll probably end up unpaired by their declaration, and I have plans of my own, I think to myself. But I don't share that with Gavin. "Do you ever wonder if there could be more?" Gavin whispers. I search the area for signs of anyone else. "Why are you whispering?" "Just answer the question." "What do you even mean?" "Well, do you think genetics and interaction are enough to pair two people up for the rest of their lives? You would spend every single day with the same person." No. It's like I said before, I don't agree with Impetus getting to choose who is paired and who is unpaired. But what else would there be other than genetics and interaction levels anyway? There doesn't seem to be a better alternative. Gavin sits down on the tree trunk and gazes at the pond decorated with falling leaves. I face the opposite direction. The pond reminds me of how big this world could be. The trees remind me of how confined my life is. Usually I prefer the pond, but it's too difficult to view right now. The idea of a greater world only makes me want to resist Impetus more. "Let me have your hand." Gavin reaches for my right hand before I can give it to him, taking it in his own. His fingers intertwine with mine. He then turns my hand over and traces the lines in my palm with his index finger. "What are you doing?" I ask. Gavin remains silent and instead guides my hand to a group of flowers, barely sweeping the tops. The majestic array of yellow, red, and purple petals sway in reaction. Do you feel that? No, nothing. Intently watching my face, he then brings my hand to the log, grazing the wood. I shake my head. He knows I can't feel anything. Why in the world is he doing this right now? Gavin's eyebrows furrow. He dips our connected hands into a puddle left over from last night's rain, in and out several times. The ripples expand and disappear. When my facial expression doesn't change, Gavin hastily stands up and paces back and forth. His face is heated, growing redder by the second. I watch in awe as the vein in his neck becomes more evident, and his arm muscles thicken each time he clenches his fists. The sun shines through the treetops and hits his face just right, revealing the innocence of youth despite years of what he calls hardships you wouldn't understand. I never considered how attractive he is. Gavin has always been a rock in my life, a part of me I couldn't imagine not existing. Now, observing his ocean blue eyes squinting in concentration, and the outline of the muscles in his back through his t-shirt, I can't believe I have gone this long without noticing it before. He is extremely handsome, and the ultimate representation of strength, security, and consistency. He's the ocean. In my dreams, Gavin isn't the man in the tree. He's the ocean. It's why I choose it. I know he'll catch me every time I fall. One more piece of the truth. I think to myself, and almost whisper out loud before Gavin's actions interrupt my epiphany. Gavin drops to a squat right in front of me. He puts one hand on each of my knees and gazes attentively into my eyes. Evangeline, tomorrow is a critical day, he begins. This is the closest Gavin has ever been. His nose is almost touching my own. And I really need you to remember who you are and the things you want. I need you to stay focused on the bigger picture, on all the things we talked about through the years. My thoughts become cloudy as I breathe in his scent, a mixed aroma of wood chips, fire, and tree sap. How have I never noticed this before? My words. Everything I've said. Please repeat them. Please reflect on all our years together. My knees. I think I can feel him. There's warmth. Promise me tonight you will think about all of... Beep. Beep. I glance down at my monitor, surprised that it's working this far out of Impetus's walls. I have to go. Gavin places his hands on my face. The warmth goes to my cheeks. I can feel him. Please, I need you to listen to me. His watery eyes are insistent. Beep, 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 beep. I jump up from the trunk, knocking Gavin backward to the ground. My monitor, I have to go. I slide off his hoodie and throw it at him, capturing one last look at that face I can only hope I'll see again. I take off in a sprint toward Impetus. Evangeline, wait! Gavin calls out behind me. Please stay. Stay? He knows I can't stay when my monitor is beeping. This is life or death. I need remedy as soon as possible, and the clinic is easily a mile away. During my run, I recall Gavin's proximity and the intensity of his actions and words. I felt him. Even if it was just in the sense of heat, I felt him. I can't feel the wind whipping through my hair right now as it flies everywhere. But I felt Gavin. I want to feel him again.